Aberration, the hostile, cavernous ark most renowned for players getting violated by 20 raptors, 10 ravagers, and an alpha basilisk as soon as they spawn in. Welcome viewers as I undertake the hardest challenge I've faced yet. From eldritch horrors beyond comprehension to eldritch horrors beyond comprehension to eldritch horrors beyond comprehension. This map is laden with death at every turn. From the venomous basilisks to the crustacean juggernaut Karkinos, to the monstrous megalosaurs, to the fiendish nameless, to the agile draconic drakes, and to the malevolent reapers, there is a fight at every turn. Do I have what it takes to conquer these caverns, to overcome the best death has to offer, and to bring down that abomination which calls these caverns his own? Find out as I survive 100 days on Ark Aberration Ascended. Waking up, I found myself in the green sanctuary of the portal, which normally is absolutely infested with death, but luckily I found that for the most part I was alone to start with, giving me plenty of breathing room to go around punching trees and grabbing bush, working towards getting the essential tools, which besides stone and wood, I would also need skin. So going around with my reusable spear, yes I'm using mods again, I went around to the locals and freed them of their burden of life, using the hide I had gotten to make myself reusable bolas and my bunk stick, which due to the speed of days passing, it had become day 2, where with my new arsenal, I now wanted to get myself some bodyguards. So I went after some of the raptors in the nearby area and tamed my first one, which I named Timmy. But I wasn't satisfied with just one, so I went around knocking out others, where I found a sheep, which I skinned, using the mutton to tame a few more raptors, and also fashioning my strongest a saddle so they wouldn't have to walk my fat ass around the area, which I continued going around, getting more raptors, losing them to wild ones, and eventually leaving the portal area, where down below a ledge I found my first basilisk. Avoiding that like the plague, I went on exploring into day 3, taming some more raptors and exploring the depths of the green zone, where I ended up finding some ravagers, which of course I wanted to add them as strong additions to my pack. But while trying to immobilize and knock one of them out, I learned why they were so dangerous. And while I was able to escape their teeth, I was not able to escape the 20 gallons of blood loss and fell to my wounds. Respawning, I immediately got ganked by some raptors. Respawning, I choked on some shrooms. Luckily, I wasn't taken out by that, and I was able to get back to my pack and recover my corpse, where with the failure of the Ravagers, I went about trying to get some more raptors. Though, while trying to knock some of those out, I got back shots from a third party and got sent to the respawn screen. Yay. Getting my gear back again, I went about punking those raptors, then back to trying to get more of them. Though, the further I traveled, the more I realized just how dangerous these caves were. Forced to fight Ravagers left and right, harassed by Yi Lings, and frightened by the river's abundance of Karkinos and Spinos. Scared off by the dangerous fauna, I went back to where I came from, working at taming some more raptors, where yet again I got shot back to the respawn screen. And when I woke up, I was right in front of a fucking Carno. Luckily, I was able to get away and get back to my pack, where I gave up on trying to make a mob of raptors and instead tried to focus on finding a somewhat safe place to make camp. Ark replied with a fucking rock drake.
Oh, no, 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 no. This is not a good place anymore.
Getting all the way away from that monster, I managed to find myself a decent parasaur, giving it a forceful lullaby, taming it with some berries, and naming our new comrade Bucky, which with this new herbivorous friend, I went about getting berries to work for drugs and food, where I ended up finding a fairly decent area next to a lake near the portal, which I figured would be a good enough place to make camp, and to aid me in my construction, I met a baby little stego, which I orphaned and adopted like the totally not criminally insane man that I totally am not. Raising the guy up and getting distracted by the glossy water rocks, which gave me cash money medal, which in that time the baby stego grew up. Yes, my stats are turned up. I am not waiting hours for a funking baby. I got them a saddle and began to get berries and wood for the construction of my new home, getting the materials and building up the structure of my home through the course of the day, where while I was doing so, I found a little Cosmo boy, which of course I stopped everything and tamed the adorable little guy, the only thing that could even remotely sate my arachnophobia, which of course I had to play with them poorly. But by day 5, I was able to finally finish construction of my home. A small-ass beach bob box, but for now it would do. Which after getting some forges, I began getting the metal I had gotten cooked, making some mortars and other necessities, using them to craft myself some liquid goop, which is totally a street slang for narcotics and not just something I made up because I can't think of anything funny, which then I was able to get together and craft a smithy where I was able to craft together some metal tools for myself. Wow, look at how much easier it was to get metal this time around. Which for day 6, my main goal going forward was to get a Doed, having seen plenty of them around, crafting myself some extra strength tranks, another returning mod, which I then used to tame a random duo of Ravagers I found, one which happened to be level 115. Bringing them both home after taming, saddling the high level, and naming her Mange, which, thirsty for blood, I took her out on the search. But for some reason she was woefully weaker than any of my raptors, so I switched to the strongest of my pack and went back out looking, where I ended up finding several Yi Ling, which made me wonder how to get one. So doing some research, I found that taming them would be a pestering pain in my ass, me needing plant species Z to flashbang them and drug them. But alas, I found nothing interesting while I was searching, so I went back home, switching back to Mange, as while the raptor was stronger, I knew she would be far better at traversing the terrain. And while out with her, I found some green gems, and the basilisk. Luckily it was distracted, but not long after I found myself a good level Doed, knocking it out and beginning the taming process. Which while waiting for it to tame, I went around hunting and looting, though when I came back, I found that it had nearly gotten killed by some random predators. That tame was ruined, but a Doed is still a Doed. So back out on the look again, where I ended up finding some Spinos along a river, which with my new tranks and a cliff I could head to top of, I decided to cheese tame them, straddling my exploitative ass on the cliff and shooting my noxious friend messages down at the unsuspecting Spinos. Knocking one of them out, which they were immediately attacked by a Sarco, so to defend my future comrade, I leapt down and bitched that croc out of existence. Which was a mistake, as going into day 7, I had to fight my way through a gauntlet of monstrosities, narrowly avoiding death to get away. Finally getting back on my cliff, I managed to snipe and knock out that second Spino, only for its taming effectiveness to be ruined by a Doed. This game really hates me. But alas, they both tamed, and Spinos being Spinos would become quite useful. They would never be used for anything meaningful. Which not done yet, I went back out with Mange searching for more creatures, hopefully for a good level Spino, now having the confidence that I could in fact tame one at all. Instead, I found a level 125 Doed, which, not making the same mistake, when I knocked it out, I babysat that fucker through the whole way, taming it eventually and naming it Dud. Which, bringing it back home, I then wanted to get myself a glow pet, so I went back out and searched for a bulb dog, and kind of forgot I was looking for one of those, and just started wandering around the green zone until I found a pyromane. I'll go ahead and save my vitriolistic reservations for this abomination in its own video, but know that I loathe this creature like no other. And eventually I managed to find that bulb dog, snagging myself a max level one, which I didn't name for a pretty good reason, and you could probably guess what that reason is. Wandering around the green zone, still on the look for goodies, I consistently came across a plethora of Yi Ling, Aberration's not so new addition. Sorry that this video took so long. But for me, these guys were brand spanking new. So wanting one, I went about doing some research on how to get those plant species Z, where I learned to get a seed for it, you just kinda had to wait for a wild plant to bust on you. How could this game get any more fucking weird? I also stumbled across the terrifying sight of an alpha crab, so I went ahead and left that guy alone. Day 8, I came across a tantalizing amount of resources, capitalizing upon them like a true American imperialist, harvesting a good chunk of crystalline metal, finding myself at one of the surface entrances to boot, which within I found some bones which I harvested for keratin, and some more metal from the rich rocks around. And being filled with those, I left, without marking the entrance on my map. I would never find this entrance again. However, I did find the hentai plant.
Ew! What the fuck?
But at last I had the seed. Now all I needed was a stable supply of fertilizer in the area to plant it, which meant that I would need a dung beetle. So I went out on the look for the green zone cave, thinking that they would spawn there, when in fact they did not. But first I found that good level Spino I was looking for, knocking it out and taming it, and finding a max level one near a crab that I killed. And with those tamed, I managed to somehow get a mate boosted pair of high level Spinos. Too bad they weren't going to be what I used for the boss fight. So back out on the look for the cave, where instead I had a totally minor scare when I came face to face with a fucking Moro Rex. Seems I forgot to disable that mod from the center series. Avoiding that hell spawn, I went out looking for the cave, finding myself near the top of the portal area, not where the cave was, by the way, where I ended up getting hit by a fatal dose of shrooms, dying while I tripped balls. Day 9, and I went out for my first attempt at getting my stuff back. And the fact that I hadn't made a bed yet made this worse, making my way halfway to where I died, only for a pack of Ravagers to vibe check me. Though luckily I managed to get away and get home, where I then got one of my raptors and ran all the way back to my corpse, where I got poisoned by the mushrooms again, shitting and falling to my imminent doom. However, I at least got my creatures away from the shrooms. Second attempt, and I managed to make it most of the way there, but was found by a basilisk first. Yeah, that didn't end well. Third try's a charm, but I died again, as when I collected my creatures, I realized that all my stuff was still on top of the cliff. So I had to climb my way back up, grab my stuff from the field of noxious shrooms, and thusly fall to my death. But at least I got my gear into a more accessible location. So I guess it's really fourth time's a charm, as when I got back, I finally got everything that I had lost with no more hiccups from there. So I continued trying to find the cave, where I did, and it was 100 feet across the lake I lived on. Are you fucking kidding me? So I went in looking for a beetle, but as I said, they didn't spawn in here. Though I did manage to get myself a glow tail, getting all the way through the cave to retrieve my very first artifact of the playthrough, the Artifact of the Depths. First artifact in the first 9 days.
That's pretty good.
Though still not aware that the beetles didn't spawn in here, I kept looking for one. Eventually realizing that they weren't spawning there, and finding that in fact they spawned in the blue zone, which if not for the artifact would have made this entire endeavor a complete waste of my fucking time. So going back home in day 10, I decided that if I couldn't immediately get a dung beetle, I would instead prepare the crop area for the plants, constructing a small expansion and putting down 2 crop plots for my future plants. Which with that, I went back out on the look for more beetles, finding some later on the cliffs above the blue zone, where that rock drake was, so I had to fight that. But when I did manage to kill it, I got myself a shit bug. And nearby, I found a good level sleepy boy, which not being patient, I decided to try and knock out. Which that went wrong in every way possible, nearly getting away, but one of the motherfuckers sniped me while I was jumping off the cliff. How can it fucking do that? How'd you get me? Getting home, I decided to get myself some actual firepower, making myself a Spino saddle, which with that and one of my new Spinos, I went back out to where I died, completely ignoring all the creatures around me and finding my corpse had fallen down the cliff. Which when I went down there and got it, I found myself in a little bit of a conundrum. There was no way back up and my climbing pick was almost broke. So with the Spino, I ended up having to find my way through the blue zone, eventually finding an escape where I found a second Z plant on the edge, getting myself another seed. Why the fuck is the tentacle squirting? On my way home in day 11, I ended up coming across a crab which it had some babies, and you know exactly what happens next. Such a lovely, not cheesy way to get my first Karkinos. Racing to bring them home, only to encounter another Mororex, only narrowly escaping it. These guys were really becoming a problem. But I did get home, throwing out my spoils, now having 2 crabs at my disposal. Then going about setting up the plants to grow, which while waiting for those, I went out with my Stego on a decent sized berry and wood run, using the Narcos to create more liquid goop, because I will never let that joke die, which while I had done that, my plants had grown up, giving me their first flashbang fruits, which made me want to try and go and get that Yi Ling. And so I went out looking for one, starting the taming process with one as soon as I found it, to get my shit profoundly rocked. So going back home, I decided that I would try again, but this time be more prepared, getting together a solid amount of flak and trying again. Returning to that Yi Ling in day 12, where again I found it extremely difficult, with the Yi Ling being incessantly hard to hit with the flashbangs, and eventually I ended up giving up and running away with my Spino. But after some research, I thought I had found a method that would make it easier. I was wrong, and proceeded to get touched violently by the demon bird, which in a rage, I politely disemboweled the motherfucker. Doing some more research, I found that instead of trying to hit it at full speed, I could make a reverse trap, it's exactly what it sounds like, to give myself more time to hit and tame it. So with that in mind, I went around the base gathering resources to craft myself that contraption. Then going out and search for some of those toxic shrooms to try and get some biotoxin. Going back to that portal room area to get some, but they didn't give any for some reason. So I went looking around the green zone, but didn't find any. So I just gave up on that and decided to use regular narcotics. So in day 13, I set out again with my Spino, finding a Yi Ling that I didn't really pay attention about its level, constructing my reverse trap and beginning the taming process, which worked magnificently, making the tame near effortless, and I implore any of you who decide to tame one of these to just take the time to make the trap. It will make your life 1,000,000 times easier. Knocking out the guy, I was able to finally tame my very first Yi Ling. And feeling successful, I tried to tame a higher level one, but it was being a little bit more complicated than last one, so I ended up just taking my W and leaving it behind. Back home, I repaired my gear, preparing next to get the resources for a gas collector, knowing that I would need it for concealed gas, which itself was needed to get hazard gear, which is what I would need to get my precious little dragon boys. Yes, we're doing this again. One of the main components being cementing paste. We're not doing this again. So I went about crafting a bunch of that, and the second being red gems, which with my new bird saddled, I went out and searched, diving into the blue zone where I got myself some blue gems while I was there, and was immediately jumped by fucking nameless rats. And it was while exploring this biome that I began to grasp just how incredibly useful the Yi Ling was. I definitely recommend it if you're looking for an early long distance traveler in Ab, as long as you tame it in that trap.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Making my way through the treacherous blue zone, I worked my way towards the pits of hell known as the rad zone, where along the borders I tried to find some sparse collection of red gems that I could quickly get before Chernobyl levels of radiation would kill me. Finding none at that border, so I went back through the blue zone, avoiding the hostilities and looting drops along the way, where I ended up accidentally stepping on some blue shrooms, which I didn't take seriously, and that led me to pass out while I was midair, falling to my death. So I had to leg it back to my body, still not having a bed. Luckily though, there was a nearby spawn point to where I died, but I had fallen off a cliff, and the pathways down were not safe to traverse at all. So I had to scrape up the resources for a parachute, which when I finally managed to get that, I made my way down and recovered my gear and Yi Ling in day 14. Thusly continuing my search, avoiding the vast dangers of the blue zone, looting all the while where I managed to get some gasoline from a purple drop. A divine blessing, as I would find out. Oil wasn't the easiest thing to really get on this map. Though after a while more looking and not finding anything, I then went back home and decided to give my Yi Ling a glorious name.
Your phone ringing.
Where around base I found a wandering level 105 Cosmo, which of course I tamed and played around with, swinging like Spider-Man, finally figuring out, googling, how to use it. Next I wanted to get me some harvesters, the main one on the mind being an Anki, and yes, I had completely forgotten about those red gems. Which knowing, googling, that they were in the blue zone and wanting to take one of those Karkinos on a test run, I decided to saddle one of them up and hike my way to the blue zone in search of an Anki. My crustacean beast proving to be a reliable brawler, beating anything in its wake to a pulp, and of course eating them all to the soulless oblivion was pretty funny too. Where while bullying the betas, I ended up finding a really good Anki, but as soon as I knocked it out, it was attacked by a Ravager, which ruined its taming effectiveness.
I have to break your neck.
Moving further into the blue zone, I went on with my killing spree, until I was concerned that the vast amount of dangerous creatures in the blue marsh would be too much for my crab, so I switched to Yi-phone linging to try and avoid the dangers. Though even in the air, whenever I needed to land, I was constantly swarmed by Nameless, and getting tired of those grimy little fucks. I went back home real quick to get my glow pet, then heading back out in day 15 to keep on searching, where I was still harassed by the dangers of the blue zone, but at least there was no Nameless. And while contemplating taming some of the megalos, one of them snatched Yi-phone linging away, which nearly got them killed. Luckily I had my crab with me, but due to that I had to switch to the crab for the duration of my search, which I ended up finding a frog that was decent level, so I tamed them. This guy will never be mentioned again. I was looting while doing this as well, obviously, where I ended up finding me a bed so I could finally spawn back at home instead of the middle of fucking nowhere, which this drop was on the edge of the red zone, where I found a pocket of non-irradiated red zone which had just the gems I was looking for.
One step closer to my dragon boys.
And while out in the lakes of the blue zone, I also managed to find some jellyfish, killing them for their sweet, sweet biotoxin, which then I began making my way home, where at the top of a cliff I was climbing with Yi-phone linging, I found yet another Mororex. Which, knowing I'd be in that area a lot, I went about luring it off the cliff's edge. Surely this would have no ramifications for the future. Back home, I decided that Crab had earned a name, so I named her Crabs. Whereafter at home, I went about doing the everlasting task of the grind. Getting cementing paste, crafting and placing a gas collector which would give me access to those pink totally not gumballs. Then using crabs and berry, I went around harvesting a plethora of resources going into day 16, where I got a decent amount, and ended up seeing that there was a good level female Spino near base. And of course I knocked that out and tamed it, but I'm not done yet, as I went again with crabs grabbing my balls, and going akimbo style against the rock race, going on the most satisfying stone run I've ever done. Then going back to crafting to get more cementing paste, where I also fashioned together a shitter to get a quick stockpile of spoiled meat. Wow, a rather mundane achievement compared to last time. And deciding that indeed this lakeside bank would be my permanent home, I decided to put together some cliff platforms. 2 of them which would be the foundation for my future home, but for now they would just be flat. And with the extra room, I went about utilizing it promptly, placing some fabricators, and with those, finally getting me some hazard gear. Almost there, almost there, almost there, almost there, almost there, almost there! Saying fuck all to my other plans, I thusly gathered together my strongest creatures and began my venture towards the deepest pits of hell in day 17. Jumping my way down, falling into some liquid lava element, and clambering my way down the caverns of the trench, fighting through a menagerie of ruthless beasts, drakes left and right, endless waves of Nameless, and all the nasty creatures in between. Eventually coming to the entrance of the den, then working my way through the coiling labyrinth, slaying my way through crabs and drakes alike, finding no eggs in sight. Going on through the mess of irradiated trees and glowing rocks until I finally found a single egg, and to my delight, it was level 155. Readying my Spinos for retaliation, I grabbed the egg and waited to find a rather underwhelming retaliatory force, so I ended up just pocketing them and continued looking around, getting another egg, which while low level would be very used for a snake. Which with that I was satisfied. Now leaving me the hard part, climbing out. Slowly working my way up the narrow pathways. Like climbing the ladder from hell to heaven, I went on fighting and running on through the wastes of radiation and death. But slowly the cracks of safety shone. Less creatures began to spawn in, so much so that I was able to tame a featherlight along my way up. And even the radiation subsided. But there on day 18, the consequences of my hubris struck me square in the face. That Moro Rex that I had lured off the cliff, the exact one that I had managed to get away from, there it was, standing between me and safety. No way up, as my climbing pick was all but broken. No way around on this thin pathway. The only way to freedom was to go through the beast. So with no other choice, I gathered my entire force together and went on the attack. Though quickly the battle turned sour. The Moro was far stronger than any of my creatures. So I was forced to leave behind most of my creatures, escaping the ire of that abomination and finally making my way out of the trenches. All it took was the sacrifice of my strongest allies, including crabs. Alas, I was free, making my way through the red zone, then the blue, and then finally into the green, where I was able to get to the safety of my home, exhausted, 4 tames down, and a rock drake egg in my clutches. Though to hatch this new egg, I would need the infrastructure to do so, which was not a cheap thing to do, needing 20 ASA units to be able to hatch it, which that would need a heap ton of metal and electronics, which for that I would need an Anki and an anglerfish. Though, I couldn't help but think of the comrades I had left behind, so in a desperate attempt, with Yi Linging, I went back to the trench, searching for my comrades where I was able to find them still fighting that hellish foe. And while I did everything I could to try and save them, all I was able to save was crabs, the rest of my Spinos being torn apart by that monstrosity, unfortunately leaving their torn apart bodies on the catwalks to hell. Anyway, Shinehorn goes BERT! Scouring the blue zone over for the harvesters I needed, I went around yet again fighting every dangerous creature imaginable in search for an Anki and an angler. Eventually finding a decent level anglerfish in the crystalline lakes, knocking it out and taming it, dubbing them Saba! Though I wasn't aware that silica did not spawn in these lakes along with the fish, so I tried to get some, pecking at the ground where I indeed found that there was none to be found. Nearly getting myself and my new angler killed in the process, which made me go ahead and leave the blue zone for a little bit, doing some research to find that there was plenty of pearls on a river near the fertile lake. So going there with my companions, I went ahead and collected a healthy helping of pearls there, plenty enough for the electronics that I would need. But on my way home, I stumbled across that alpha carky nuzzle we found earlier, and now with the proper firepower, I decided to finally get the first alpha kill of the playthrough, smiting it with crabs and getting its claws as a trophy. Arriving back at home in day 20, I was going to put the resources I had gotten towards the AC units, but decided instead to put that on hold just a little bit longer to instead get myself an Indie Forge, something that would make getting all the upgraded workstations that I would need much easier to attain. Working to that end, where I managed to get everything that I needed besides oil, which as mentioned earlier was not the easiest thing to get my hands on. After doing some research, I then found that the best way to get oil was to go down back to the pits of hell, where I could find some oil nodes down along the liquid element lake. And to make my life easier when it came to harvesting, I first decided to go and try and find that Anki, traveling down to the blue zone with Yi Linging, where I ended up getting assaulted by a megalosaur and a basilisk all at once, which led to mine and my glow pets and Yi Linging's death. Going back with one of my remaining Spinos, I went to retrieve my corpse, where the basilisk immediately violated me and sent me back to the spawn menu. Second attempt, and with no good creature to retrieve my stuff, I instead took out my Cosmo, going out butt naked into the blue zone, where again the basilisk came for my cheeks, but thankfully I was able to get to the safety of my Spino and bitch left him right back to hell! Which with that dealt with, I went back out on the search, first finding myself a replacement glow pet, which now you should all know why they didn't get named. And then in day 21, I was able to find a pretty decent Anki, nearly killing it. Well, that's not what we wanted. Knocking it out, watching it sleep, then taming and naming it Kunk, which immediately I went about using them to harvest the metal-rich rocks, which were oh so common in this blue oasis of death, where I was able to find another Anki that was level 145, which Kunk didn't like for some reason, so they tried to murder them. And apparently nobody liked that Anki, because shortly thereafter, a random-ass megalo came and went to try and attack it too. So I knocked that boy out and went about taming that, which crabs must have gotten jealous at the high level of the megalo and decided to bully it, ruining its taming effectiveness as as well. And the fun didn't stop there, as while I was getting more berries for the Enki, I was assaulted by a level 140 Megalosaur, which ironically the only way to save myself was to knock it out. So I went ahead and tamed that one as well. But when I brought the Enki their berries, I saw that the taming effectiveness was so poor that it wasn't even worth trying to tame, so I decided to just put it out of its misery. At least I got 2 sleepy boys. Though before day's end on the border of the green zone, I did manage to find a level 105 Enki, which I went about taming, thankfully not hurting this one, and tamed it in day 22. Back home, with the loss of Yi Linging, I knew I'd need a replacement mount. So I went out to go get myself a new Yi Ling, finding a level 125, which I began the only right way to tame it, knocking it out and doing just that. Which this new companion needed a name worth its level, and yes, I just named it Yi Linging Jr. Which, to get them leveled up as soon as possible, I went around looking for an explorer note, getting one in day 23, and then purging for levels. Which, when it was adequately leveled, I decided to go get some motherfucking oil!
Yeah, USA, baby!
Using Kunkin crabs to get as much oil as I could possibly get at the bottom of the trench. Then, crashing, and to save time, I decided just to use my pickaxe instead of the Yankee. Though I did manage to get plenty enough for the forge. Getting back home and crafting the Indie Forge. So with that, and a grill because yes, my fat ass needed to inhale a constant streamline of 10 pounds of meat every single fucking second, I thusly needed more resources for the ACs, cooking up the metal I had gotten while in the blue zone, and then going out with Yi Linging Jr. out on the look for crystal, getting the needed supply I needed from green gems, then going back home, putting away the new stash, and crafting the needed electronics. And then I waited for the electronics to actually craft.
But then I crafted the ACs, baby!
Which, with that, I could finally have
Dragon, baby!
Immediately placing down the ACs and laying out my rock drake egg. And soon enough, I hatched my very first rock drake of the playthrough. Naming the little lad Jade for their feathers, taking care of them and imprinting them, where soon enough my beast of annihilation grew up to full strength. Making Jade a new saddle and immediately taking them out on a murder run to level them up. Running this carnage charade all the way into day 25, where I eventually made my way to the trenches.
Cause yes, I was about to goblin the entire next generation of baby drakes.
Getting as many as I could find, including a level 170 egg. Killing the defending my property. I went around collecting my children, getting many eggs until I was satisfied, leaving the region destabilized. Ah, to be American. Which, with a bunch of fodder eggs, I wanted to get me some basilisk boys. Going around the blue zone for one, not finding one. So I then went to the green zone and found 2 at the portal. And after some tense negotiations, I eventually managed to tame them both, acquiring a decent breeding couple.
But I wanted more!
So I went back out looking, heading back to the blue zone to look for one and some more sleepy boys, planning to have them as the backbone of my boss army. Finding a level 140 basilisk in day 26, though they were kinda shy, but eventually I managed to befriend them, adding my 3rd basilisk to the ranks. And satisfied with snakes, I turned my attention solely on sleepy boys, scouring the blue zone all over and eventually dipping my hands into the red zone, where I came across my first reaper of the playthrough.
What's up, baby? Did you miss me?
And while going around, I accidentally found the red zone cave. But since my armor wasn't really healthy, I decided to just mark it on my map and head back home. Next thing on my agenda was to finally get to building my base. But before I could do that, I wanted to get my hands on some better harvesters. Namely a roll rat, which needed honey to tame. So I went out and got myself a dire bear to help in that endeavor. Not really wanting to tame a bee. Naming them Windows 11. Looking for a beehive in day 27, I scoured the green zone all over until I realized that it was 90% night. And very aware of the ultimate looting opportunities on the surface, I went to find an entrance as soon as possible. Totally not Googling and finding one near the portal, I finally crawled my way to the surface for the very first time, strangely finding a lack of surface reapers while I went around looting, coming across a red drop that had 2 ascendant shotguns, baby! And on I went looting till the sun began to rise, and not wanting to be cooked by
the deadly laser,
I went back to the safety of the caves, where I went back to looking for a bee, and didn't find one. And then it became night again, so I went back for a loot goblin spree. This time, however, the reapers were spawning, and not quite aware of just how dangerous they were, I didn't take the necessary cautions while looting, which immediately ended with my brutal demise. So immediately respawning, I went back after my stuff, not wanting to lose any of those goodies. So I immediately went to the surface with Yi Linging Jr., where unfortunately I watched as Jade was ripped limb from limb. However, I was still determined to get my stuff back. So I went around trying to lure the Reapers away from my corpse, and thinking that I had done that adequately, so I went after my corpse, and learned that I in fact had not at all, as one of them came out of nowhere and killed me and my Yi Ling. all was lost. At home in day 28, I was pressed to give up. But then I remembered I have snakes. So, saddling one of them up, I raced to the surface, glitching my way up the cliffs, and eventually making it back to the surface, where I realized that my plan was not going to work at all. So I tried going back, to find that one of the cliffs that I dropped down was a 90-degree angle, making it almost impossible for a snake to get up. I tried to force my way up regardless. What the fuck am I doing? I am trying to glitch. I'm trying to force my way. That is the hardest reality check. Someone just pops into chat and goes, "What the fuck are you doing?" Alas, it was not to be, as my snake got stuck in a rock. As the sun began to rise, we were cooked alive. Finally admitting defeat, I went about recovering my basic gear and realizing that all my nameless venom was on my body when I died, meaning that I would need to get more of that before I could raise any drake. So with crabs, I went out looking for nameless, going to the blue zone and killing as many as I could find, slaughtering all the way to day 29, where I had gotten enough venom for my liking, which while I was killing, I had come with a thought. I was in single player, which that means if anything is out of render distance, it goes into a state called stasis. And when I died and respawned, that meant that my snake would have gone into stasis, meaning very well it could still be alive. So, with that thought, I went to the surface and indeed found them alive, and then crashed. And not having any more time for that recording, I needed to turn my spider crab into a super crab to fly back home and log off. Still needing that rat, I went out with crabs yet again, this time only a normal one, and went out looking, deciding that taming a grown one wasn't worth the hassle of getting honey, instead finding and making an orphan. Getting back home with my rat, I decided it was about time to get me that replacement rock drake. So I went about hatching a level 135 egg, not quite wanting to hatch the level 170, which was probably the right call as I immediately neglected the baby as I went out on a berry run with the stego. Finding the baby hatched and claiming it, and then giving them the name Azur. And then immediately abandoned it for some milk, berries. Coming back only to imprint it and then going back out on my grind sesh, making plenty of drugs to replace the arrows I had on my body when I died, then running the block on some rocks with my akimbo doeds, getting a heaping ton for building the base, which is something I still wanted to do. Which with the rat grown, I crafted it a saddle and went out on a massive haul for wood. Then coming back to find a grown azur, which with them and berry, I went out in day 30 to go get a bunch of thatch from the blue zone, wherein I got thatch. Which with all the resources done, I went about finally building the base, deciding to go with a cross-dome approach, crafting and placing out the base of structure going all the way into day 32, finishing the base then. Which with that done, I wanted to finally go on a proper metal run, taking my Enkies and crab out to the blue zone to go on a massive metal run, which with this new akimbo harvesting style, I wanted to try and break my record for the most metal harvested, period, where I managed to get back home with what I thought was 20,000 ingots worth of raw metal, which was not the most I'd ever gotten in one run, having gotten 22k on the island. Watch those videos if you can bear the cringe and the shit quality. But as I would learn later, my calculations weren't exactly accurate. Day 33 and I went down to the trench again with Azor to go get some oil, getting a healthy heap of that and killing another alpha crab, which was near the Rockwell terminal. So I finally decided to get a peek at what I would need to fight Alpha Rockwell, where I found that I needed each of the artifacts, those being the already acquired depth, the stalker, and the shadows, then needing 8 basilisk scales, 7 drake feathers, 40 nameless venom, 7 reaper pheromone, and by far the hardest, one of each of the alpha trophies. Luckily already acquiring the alpha crab claw, but still needing the alpha basilisk fang and the daunting alpha reaper barb. Which, of course, while I was down there, I couldn't help but get myself some rock drake eggs, wanting to get some more good ones and spares that I could use to tame a Gigantoraptor, which I did manage to get a few, but while down there, I found a crab with some babies, which always wanting more good creatures, I went about killing the parent and trying to get the child. But while doing so, I was ambushed by a drake, which ended up breaking a piece of my hazmat gear. In the deepest pits of radioactive hell, I frantically tried to race out of the caves running as fast as I could, but eventually, that Chernobyl level radiation snuffed me out good. At home, I gathered together myself a new set of rad gear and crabs, setting out for the trench immediately, getting back to where I had died in day 34, where I found my corpse and found that Azor had gotten stuck in the mesh. Though that was the least of my worries, as while I was trying to get them out, a rock drake ambushed me and almost killed me. Luckily, I was able to save myself. However, I wouldn't be able to say that about the next thing that happened. No! Can I get y'all's permission to fucking GCM out of this? This shit's ridiculous. My fucking guy is stuck in the floor, and that's the only reason why I'm in this situation right now. If I unpause and let the stream end, I'm dead. Or let this, what's about to happen, unfold, I'm dead. There isn't a way out of this situation that I'm in right now. Thank you very, very much. This is some bullshit. I apologize that I cheated once again, but to be fair, chat gave me permission, and my drake had gotten stuck in the mesh. I call that even. Anyways, totally quickly getting out of that situation completely legit, I went back to getting rock drake eggs, eventually realizing I forgot to turn off GCM and fixing that, where I got a decent batch of eggs and eventually left the den, that being the last time I ever went there for pretty obvious reasons. Back home, I put away my spoils and decided to finally hatch all of my good level drakes, throwing down the clutch of eggs, which levels were 125, 140, 2 150s, 155, and 170, spending the rest of the day hatching them, raising them, and imprinting them where they had all grown up in the evening, which I went ahead and named 3 of them, one for my good friend Billy Bobber, one for myself, and one for one of my viewers. Naming Billy's Glizzy Guzzler, yes, that's what he wanted, telling me to paint them pure white with my Dino Painter mod, which for my viewer, they asked for theirs to be named Dark Soul of the Knights, asking for them to be colored black and red, and then I, coloring mine purple and black, naming the Drake Midnight, which in day 35, with my new Drakes acquired, I went about punishing Azor for their failures, which it was around then that Billy wanted me to recolor theirs blue instead of white. Now having a decent collection of Drakes, I wanted to get my hands on a more diverse collection of creatures. So using some of the narcotics that I had made, I crafted myself some of the legendary Trank arrows from the Extra Tranks mod, going out with my new companion Midnight on the search, immediately finding a pickaxe blueprint in a drop, which made me want to go back home and craft it, but then I went out looking for creatures. No. I went to the trench to test out the pickaxe and get some oil. But then I went looking, no. I found a Reaper near a charge station, which I killed for my first spit of pheromone. So then I went out, no. I went around looking for more Reapers to kill. So then I musta, no. I went back home and did some crafting, trying to get a chemistry bench, crafting some vaults and lights as well. So then, no. I went out for crystal in day 37, which I needed for the chemistry bench. So then I crafted the chemistry bench? No.
Oh, for fuck's sakes!
I went out trying to kill more Reapers, but I needed a glow pet first, so I went and got a shine horn and got a shid bug as well. And then you went to go kill Reapers, right? Yeah.
Oh, thank God!
I managed to kill some, getting a total of 20 pheromone. So then you went out looking for creatures, right? No, I went to the surface.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I managed to recover my old Shinehorn and Basilisk while I was up there too, where in the start of day 38, I went around the surface fighting Reapers to get a feel for how Midnight could handle them, where I decided to take a more stealthy route at getting loot drops, going invisible whenever I was looking for a drop, then when I found one, I pounced to the ground and
Atomized every Reaper I could find.
Then cautiously collecting the drop and then running away like a bitch, which I did this getting varying qualities of loot, and nearly dying again, where eventually from a purple drop, I managed to get 2 Ascendant long necks. But after a while, with the fear of the sun stuck on my mind, I ended up cowering away back to the depths of the caverns, heading back home where I finally crafted that chemistry bench, then clearing out the yard as there were a few too many things around. Which then it turned back to night, where while I was looting, I ended up finding a second entrance to the surface, and then later found myself an Ascended railgun from one of the drops, an addition from Tristan's Vecta Spinus mod, crucial for taming one of them. Getting another drop which was stacked with loot, ending up giving me an amazing fab sniper and some of the goo guns from the Bob's Talldale's editions. And then I got even more loot as it turned into day 39. But my gut was starting to tell me that the sun might be coming out soon, unaware of the predetermined cycle of day and night, so I retreated back underground. But not satiated, I went around the map looting the regular drops, eventually finding my way back home where I began to do some crafting, getting cementing paste and such. Which while I was working, I ended up spotting a really good level Gigantoraptor right outside base. And really wanting one, I wanted to take a crack at getting it. Dropping some eggs for it to eat, I went to go and dance with the baby. But while doing so, a Ravager had started wreaking havoc around us, and hoping it would go away, I went about to tame, but wouldn't you figure it decided that as soon as I tamed the baby, to fucking attack me. And when I tried to kill it, I killed the baby Gigantoraptor as well. In day 40, I was out looking for another Gigantoraptor, where instead I found myself a max-level female basilisk. So with one of the eggs I had, I went and tamed it, which thankfully, shortly after, I found another Gigantoraptor, which was level 110, where I went about taming it, but due to the hostility of the area, the parent often got in fights, and one of the times I put the egg a little bit too close. Hello, buddy. Really? But eventually I did manage to tame that baby, thundercunting the terrible parent and running away with my spoils. Heading home, I let it grow up, but that level 130 from earlier decided to kill my Featherlight. Good thing I didn't get attached to any of those. Eventually the baby grew up, and thankfully to my looting, I was able to gift them with an Ascendant saddle, which I also decided to name this not-so-little guy Drake. It still needed to heal before I could take it out on a test run, so I went out to the Blue Zone to go looking for things to tame, where I ended up finding a level 110 Vecta Spinus with a child. And because of that, I could hear Drake fiending from across the map. So I went back to go collect them, though I ended up failing to find that Vecta Spinus again, instead finding a max level female Megalo. which of course I tamed, and then in day 41, I found a level 125 Megalo, which I tamed as well. And this one had a child. Good thing I didn't give Drake a basement. So instead I gave the baby a coffin. Ha ha ha! What the fuck is wrong with me? Though with nothing else worth taming, I went back home with my new friends, where I found that one of those Megalos had a melee stat of 40, which was good enough to be a breeder for the army. All that I needed now being a good level male. And then I got distracted bouncing balls. Whoa! Out on the look for Megalos and danglers, as Silva was on my body when I had died to that Reaper. Forgot to mention that. I went around looking, finding a level 135 fish in day 42, then finding a level 140 shortly after, which after taming those, I went out looking for Megalos, where I was able to find a level 135 male, taming it, and with a test of loyalty, I told it to kill its only child, where it hit for 1,000 damage right out the box, which made me thought it had crazy melee. It didn't. So I went after another, finding a level 140 male, which when I tamed that one, I found that it had a health stat of 41, which would make the perfect offspring if I bred it with that high melee female. So I went home and pulled a syntac, hoping to have their stats mesh into one baby, which was successful, but then...
Repeat it, you're gonna have to fuck your mother.
Which on the mind of babies, I decided to get ready to put together something for a future child. Going out with the rat for some wood, which ran into day 43, getting back home to spin the block with my balls out, and then I forced the Megalos to become Alabama citizens. Where while they committed crimes against God, I went around grinding and cooking metal, where I found that, in fact, rather than getting 20k metal as I understood earlier, I instead got 47,000! Which, yes, that breaks any record I've had before. But I forgot about the smash. Finding a bunch of babies on the floor, where I ended up getting a reciprocal female for the male I had bred out, but the rest were useless. At least now I had a prime pair. Which then I went out with my new anglers to the fertile lake to get some pearls. First going to that little river I got them last time, not getting any pearls from there, but taming a nice otter. And thankfully I was able to find pearls in day 44, eventually racking up around 10,000 of them. More than enough for the rest of the playthrough, so with that done and me already having scuba on from getting the pearls, I decided to go and get the other two artifacts. Starting out with the Blue Zone Cave, which was under the deeper waters of the crystalline lakes. Entering the cave and slowly working my way through with Midnight's invisibility, avoiding jellyfish and eel alike, eventually reaching the end of the cave to get myself the Artifact of the Shadows. Next to the Red Zone Cave, arriving in day 45 where I began completely avoiding everything in that cave and effortlessly attaining the Artifact of the Stalker. Damn. Artifacts done already, and we ain't even halfway done. Back home, I put the artifacts on some pedestals, then got the Sleepy Boys fucking, and then put those resources I had gotten to good use, fashioning together a small stone hut perfect for holding a baby Reaper, which was something I most definitely wanted to do in this playthrough, as it would be my first time ever in my almost 4,000 hours that I had ever tamed one. Which with that done, I went on breeding the Legion, where the first few results were not good enough, realizing that the prime pair wasn't quite in sync. So I focused on getting some replacements to fix that, where I went about the process of getting gunpowder all the while, getting spark powder and charcoal, collecting and breeding into day 46, where I got all the flint I would need for the spark powder, focusing my attention thereon to the breeding of the army, having a couple of the kids get infected with a disease called anger issues, breeding and killing and breeding, working my way into day 47, grinding all the while, which eventually getting a suitable start to the Legion, it became nighttime. I so happened to wander my way up to the surface for some ground loot, going on quite the loot goblin session, getting a ton of drops going to sunrise, where I saw a red drop in view, and it appeared as if I had more time, the sky going dark again, so I went out to try and go and get it, just for the wrath of God to start cooking me alive. I barely managed to escape to the safety of the second entrance, finding that it led to the radiation zone, where at the entry I found a pretty good level Reaper Queen and know it's dead. Though out of curiosity, I went back to the surface. Yup, that sure looks like hell. So I went back and found another Reaper, which was kinda curious. And it wasn't too bad a level either, so I tried to get impregnated by it. That doesn't sound right at all. Managing to figure out how to get it horny, ew, I went down and got brutally beaten by it, though eventually she managed to stick it in me. What the fuck is wrong with this game? Though unfortunately some feds came and killed me for animal abuse, so I lost that baby Reaper. Or so I thought, as when I went to go back and get my stuff, the baby done popped out of my chest, which that thing was bloodthirsty, immediately going on a killing rampage that it frankly could not handle. So I went around protecting it, and when it finally calmed down, I went and got some crystal, made a Pokeball, and put it away. Then going back to my body and grabbing my things. Which, emboldened by the baby Reaper in my pocket, I went out to try and get another, finding another Reaper, lowering its health, and then waiting to get fucked. Instead, I got fucked, in the not-so-nice way of getting shot back to the spawn menu. Respawning in day 48, I got Glizzy Guzzler and returned back to my body, where some Reaper didn't take a liking to my existence, so I had to kill them. But I did manage to get my stuff and go home, throwing on my injured creatures to heal, and my new Reaper, naming it accidente, as it essentially was. But then it was night and I went to go get loot faster than your dad went for milk. Going around getting some amazing loot, including a monstrous Vectispinus saddle. But then the sun started to rise, and not wanting to get another dose of skin cancer, I retreated to safety. Spending some time at home cleaning my inventory and placing some structures I had gotten from the looting, including a chem bench and an indie grinder. Where it went back to night, so I went back for some more milk. Getting even more amazing loot, including a shield and an ascended pump, though it was kinda shit compared to the ones that we lost. However, extremely paranoid of the sun and still not knowing about the solar cycle, I ran back down to the caves in day 49, going to the rat entrance, which, noticing a pattern from earlier, I tried something. See, I think if you just reload and, like, unload and then reload this area, a Reaper just spawns here for some reason. There you go. That's level 20. Fuck that shit. I wonder, does that just work? Just go up this way, right? No particular reason, just want to check if the world's on fire yet. Yep, kind of looks like it is, so we're gonna just go back down. And back this way. Right, just casually so. Drop here.
Who the fuck is this?
Wow, that does work. So, let's say we do that again. Oh, I think I forgot my glasses up in the surface. I gotta go get them. So I crawl my fat ass all the way to the surface, like the little gecko that I am. Check temp. Feels like it's hell outside. So we head over here. Oh, I got my glasses. No problem. We're just gonna come right back here. Yep. Nothing happened at all. No cheesing here. And I just... Wow, it really works. So... I have dementia, right? So I forget that I got my glasses. So I go back outside, going for my glasses, right? Oh no, my glasses, I gotta go get them. So I jump up the cliff, right? Like the little gecko that I am. Is the world on fire? It's about to be. Anyways, I find my glasses, get a heartbeat skip because while finding my glasses, the sun fucking cussed me out. So I head the wrong fucking way. And then I head over here, right? Right. Nothing's going on. No problems to be seen at all. And then I come down here, and then... Oh my goodness! Another Reaper! Who would have figured? Getting plenty of pheromone and eventually finding a decent enough one, which with my new shield, I wanted to get a baby from. Yeah, just let that sentence sit in your mind for a minute. So I went about going rough with her, which turned her on, so after some BDSM, she gave me the child I wanted. Yes, I just fucking said that. So with the baby in my chest, I went on a killing spree, getting it leveled up, and then barely managing to get it into my cage. Finally claiming my brand new level 185 Reaper, which after it chilled out, I brought out and named Tyrannus. My second ever Reaper tamed, which wasn't an accident this time. I also decided to paint both of my Reapers, Accidente to pink and Tyrannus to red. Then we were at day 50, so I decided to finally go about breeding the rest of the Legion, spending the rest of the day breeding and claiming and raising and killing and imprinting and killing and breeding, going into day 51, where eventually I managed to get a mutated one which turned pink, so I named them Majin Buu. And later on I then finally managed to finish breeding out the entire army. What do I do now? I've got almost all the tributes. I'm waiting for the army to heal. Fuck it, let's go grind. I went out getting a bunch of resources, wanting to try and test out a bunch of the new stuff from Bob's Tall Tales. Which while I was out, I ended up finding a really good level Nothosaurus, another modded creature that I had added. And with the things that I needed to tame it in my inventory, I went about doing so. Taming my very first Noodle Boy, where I went back home, saddled it, and thusly went about playing around with it. Learning that I just inadvertently tamed the God of Thunder and Tungsten Cubes. Who wants to hold the Tungsten Cube? Hunting all the way into day 52, I left the green zone a near lifeless husk as I finally returned back home, just to find a high-level crab outside my base, and wanting to tame one legit, I fashioned together a cannon and a trap, boxing that loser and then shooting it in the motherfucking face, where I then tamed her, naming them Karakani, which then I painted her red, because funny. Then, with both the saddle and the railgun, I went out to try and tame a Vectispinus, where I went out looking, also in the search for an Alpha Basilisk. Spoilers, I wouldn't find one. And in day 53, I managed to find that Vectispinus that I wanted, so I shot it in the motherfucking face. And then I tamed it, naming it Viagron, cause yes, that's a very funny name. Which by the time I got back home, the army of Megalos had healed up, so I decided to go and take them out leveling, collecting them all up in Pokeballs and starting with Majin Buu, where while I was doing so, I was looking for treasure. Where I found the first treasure was stuck under some lava, but regardless, I went on leveling, going across the map, killing and killing and killing and killing and killing and killing and killing, and then I finished in day 54. So I went back home and picked up Tyrannus, deciding that I would play with them while I was looking for Alpha Basilisks. So then I went on killing and 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 found not a single one even into day 55. bringing Tyrannus home and heading out with my basilisk, naming her Gorgon as she deserved the name, and then going out on the search, killing and having a concerning conversation with chat. Love listening to Daddy Rockwell. Bruh, I don't care he has tentacles, you cannot fuck the monster. The fact that this is even up for debate is insane. No, you cannot fuck the monster. We're not fucking a monster on the road trip. See, Trash agreed. But that's not, no. Just because someone agrees with you doesn't make you right. I agree too, you can do a lot with those things. Okay, you can do a lot with a lot of things. It does not mean you should. The fact that I'm having this discussion with my chat scares me. We're even into day 56, I still couldn't find one. So I switched to midnight to search even more, scouring the whole fucking map over. But even into day 57, I found nothing. And with that torturously long search for a snake, I decided to give myself a break and go looting on the surface, hoping to find an Alpha Reaper King while I was up there, getting some amazing loot going into day 58, but I still found no Alpha Reapers. And with the worry of the sun, I went back down to the caverns, going around the green zone looking for Alpha Basilisk again, obviously finding none. Where it turned to night again, so I tried to go to the surface, finding a new entrance near the fertile lake, leading to a new pocket I hadn't been in before, where I went around looting and then killing Reapers, which was starting to overwhelm Azur, the Drake I was riding, so I threw out Gorgon, which made me want to switch to them. But as soon as I got my first confrontation with the Reaper, I killed myself and my pet with the poison ball. So I rushed back to my body in day 59, hoping to not have a repeat of Jade, which thankfully I was able to prevent that from happening, saving Gorgon, where then I went around looting again, where I finally found an Alpha Reaper, killing my first and only one of the playthrough, checking off the second to final thing I needed for the boss fight. But now I would need to look for the Alpha Basilisk again. Just kill me now. I scouted the whole map over and still didn't find one. So I went back home, where I decided to finally craft those new things from Bob's Tall Tales, making a survivor mate, the airship, the tinkering desk, and a steam forge. And also making an indie cooker to make med brews for the boss fight, where into day 60, I went about placing and testing out all the new stuff. Starting with the steam forge, where I learned that it would need element to run. Fuck. Then onto the tinkering desk, finding it just neat. Then onto the bot, which I couldn't figure out anything other than how to tell it to harvest stuff. Then taking the airship on a short ride, where I kind of didn't like how slow it was, which I dicked around for long enough, so I went back out looking for the snake, flicking over the whole green zone from the portal to the greater forests to the fertile lake and all in between to find absolutely fuck all. And absolutely exhausted looking for snakes, I decided to instead try and get that element for the steam forge, aware that I could craft some from the charge nodes. So in day 61, I went about getting the resources that I needed, including green gems, blue gems, red gems, congealed gas, element ore, and charge batteries. Starting with the green gems, where I found some in the portal room, and finally fucking found that goddamn snake! Finally getting the final tribute I needed for the boss fight in day 61, in a 100 days playthrough. No, it's fine. Anyways, I resumed about getting the element, getting the congealed gas from my collector, stealing some of Mr. White's meth from the blue zone, getting some red gems for the rad zone, and then dropping all of that off at home, where I went about crafting the batteries. Frankly, way too fucking many, as I wasn't aware that when crafting the element, it didn't destroy the batteries. Which while crafting those, I also went around making a bunch of ammunition to help prepare for the fight, making plenty for the plethora of weapons I had gotten while looting, including getting some artillery shell for Viagron's saddle, which I guess it's about time I bring up my battle plans. Currently, I was going to bring my Legion of Sleepy Boys, Gorgon, Viagron, Tyrannus at midnight to the boss arena, using Tyrannus and the Megalos to deal damage to Rockwell directly, and then me, Viagron, and Gorgon would go around fucking its tentacles, that mean killing them. Get me off this fucking map! Why are there so many fucking tentacles? Which I went on crafting, going out with Barry in day 62 to get the materials for med brews. Tintos and narcotics if you aren't already aware, where I managed to get a decent stash, so then I went back to the element crafting, going down to the trench to get the element nodes. Which when I had finally gotten enough, I went back home to collect all my resources, to finally go about crafting the element at a charge station. But when I first went to go craft some, I didn't realize that the batteries had to be charged to craft element, and so I shorted the first one out. But then I went to a second one and crafted my first batch of element, where I was expecting one, but ended up getting 3. So then I went and crafted me a second batch to get me a total of 6. Where then I went back home to go and test the Steam Forge in day 63, testing it out and finding that it was only twice as good as an Indie Forge, which was good for grinders, but if you're doing a 100 days video where you're not really going to get much access to element, it isn't exactly going to be very useful for you. Though now, I had nothing to do. But I'm really good at fabricating shit to do, and realizing that my shotgun's quality was kind of subpar, I decided to go out looting, though the sun was out. So instead of going up to the surface, I went around the caverns getting the normal loot, taming some new pets as all admired mine had died, where it then finally turned to night, and I finally learned the solar cycle, which did help me loot. But after some looting, the sun came back out, so I went back down to the caverns, continuing my looting spree, even going home and breeding me some baby snakes, because I thought they'd look adorable, which they did. And soon enough, it finally turned to 90% night on day 67. Yes, I waited that fucking long. So, I then spent days 67, 68, and half of 69 looting for a shotgun, which I didn't find. So, with nothing else to do, I went ahead on day 70 to go and fight Rockwell. Going first to set up my army, forgetting the tribute, so I went back home instead. Getting those and heading back, but then I forgot my brews and ammunition, so I went back. But then I finally came back and went about setting up the Legion. 55 hours, 70 days, and plenty of hard work, but I had finally conquered these caverns, and now was going to fight the monster in control. Now I would fight Rockwell for my freedom. Okay, here we are. Everyone follow me.
Have you come here to challenge me?
Yes, I have.
I'm afraid you've made a fatal error in judgment.
Have I?
Survivor.
I don't think I have. Alright, go kill that bastard.
You find yourself in the presence of Sir Edmund Rockwell.
Yes, I'm very aware of what I'm
Scientist.
beholding.
Survivor. Are you still here?
Yes, I'm still here, you little bastard.
You cannot defy a god.
Yes, I can. You seem kind of bitch-made, my mans. Alright, I want to try out the rifle. Okay, well, I can't see with the rifle.
Don't recall giving you permission to touch me.
Well, you don't give me permission to do shit.
Behold the might of Edmund Rockwell.
Really? Woo! I almost got hit by that. Hit that bastard with everything you got.
Stop that, would you?
No, I'm not gonna stop it. Ow, could you stop that?
Feel free to grovel. That might amuse me.
Will it amuse you? I don't think I want to do that anymore then.
You're really quite annoying.
Yes, I know I am. Oh, you slimy piece of shit. Alright, I'm freaking...
Well, for a mere human.
For a mirror? Brother, I am your fucking doom.
Go on. Take your best shot.
Doing it. Alright, I'm getting on the U. Vector Spinus, come on. I want to hit some shots with this guy.
I've never cared for stinging insects. You can't touch me now.
Yes, I can. I'm touching you pretty aggressively, I think. I think I'm touching you pretty confidently, my friend. Alright, touching the tentacle.
You brought this on yourself. You're really trying my patience.
Good. I knew this Vector Spinus would come in handy. How about thee? Alright, there's Reapers.
What exactly is your plan? Even if you could be passing to the surface.
This rail gun has helped me dramatically.
Honestly, what's the point?
The point is to prove you fucking wrong. So good, Gorgon. Join up with us.
Why do you recoil from my lovely minions?
I don't recoil, I fucking flip you the bird. Getting this Vector Spinus was the best thing I could have done for this playthrough.
You haven't thought this through, I can tell.
How the fuck are you still doing shit?
Edmundium has granted me a finer form. That one was my favorite.
Was it your favorite? Good. Fuck you, you British cunt.
The power I command.
How about the power I command, bro? I'm kicking your dick in. Kill that tentacle.
You think you've hurt me in some way?
Yeah. Oh shoot. Midnight, no! What's going on to you, Midnight?
There's something to cry about.
I need a safe area away from the electricity so I can prod him from a distance.
I'm done pulling my punches.
You're so condescending for a man that's dying right now.
Before this.
Oh.
I'm in danger.
Uh-oh, I think my shoulder pet died. Uh-oh, the bulldog died. This is gonna make this significantly harder. Okay, this is actually starting to get difficult.
You're really quite annoying.
So are you.
Don't recall giving you permission to touch me.
Don't recall giving you permission to live. Oh, motherfucker, they're not biting him. Fuckers!
Let's end our hostilities here and now.
Oh my lord, oh my lord. And Midnight's starting to actually get low now.
The unquiet. Edmundium could be your Excalibur. The magic weapon to slay a dragon.
He's starting to ramble like his life's on the line. There we go!
my god, that had my... Oh, my nerves. Yeah. Oh, baby.
Alright, I'm approaching the ascension table.